What's up, and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod, the return of the power. Folks, before I introduce my co-host, I wanted to apologize for not bringing you these dulcet tones into your earballs last week because I had no power. Asiasis, I actually don't know exactly how to pronounce the tropical storm that came up the coast. It's something like that. Came by and we were getting ready to record, and I had my power go out, and it was out for 5 days. So I got it back this Sunday, promptly lost it for a couple more hours on Monday, and then it's been back since. So we're here to give you the Megapod, talking lots of music, I guess not a lot of TV, but we're talking some TV from Netflix and then also a couple movies. But Dave, my trusty co-host, is here with me, giving you our weekly look at what's going on in pop culture, or our 2 weeks of what's been going on. I wanted to ask you, as the listeners have surely been anticipating, the XXL magazine freshman drop came. How did we do this year in terms of picks, or how did you do? Because I don't really pick them.
That's good. So this year, 2020, we had 6 of 12 picks correct. Interesting that they picked 12 people this year. They haven't done that in several years. That we were only planning for 10. Those 6 we got correct were the really obvious ones: Jack Harlow, Little TJ, NLE Choppa, who we'll be talking about later today, Polo G, of course, Fabio Ford, and Rod Wave. And we gave the reasonings for why they all made sense in the video, so go check that out. The predictions if you want. Nothing really too surprising with those. I will say that Lil Tecca not being here screams of him not really putting his name out there, not really caring, because he was also one of my other locks. He is not here. Fabio Ford, notably, was the Brooklyn drill artist I thought they would pick. They had many to pick from. They're probably only going to pick one, and they picked Fabio. That's cool. And that leaves a few of the other ones we didn't pick. So one of the picks I thought was really safe was Don Toliver, who is the Travis Scott clone, signed to Cactus Jack, made noise with Jack Boys, released that album earlier this year, had some hits. I'm not a huge fan of him. I don't think he's that special. And they didn't actually pick him, which surprised me, but they picked Lil Keed instead. And Lil Keed is the Young Thug clone, signed to Young Thug. So it's like the same thing. That made me laugh. They also picked Baby Keem. His song from last year, Orange Soda, is hilarious. So he was someone I thought was definitely in the mix, as was 24K Golden, who also made it. And then 2 women made it this year, Mulatto and Chica. Mulatto I'm familiar with. Chica I am not. I was thinking of Danny Lay making it, and more recently I was thinking of Flo Milli. I'm not really sure when exactly they made these choices, but either way, it's obviously good to see more women being represented because there's so many good ones to choose. And that only leaves one pick I have real beef with, which is Cowboy, who I didn't mention in our predictions video, just because I thought it was kind of an underwhelming choice. And, they had those scam rappers like Guap Dad 4000 and TJX6. It's more, or even Duke Deuce from Memphis. There's just more interesting people they could have picked. And I did see Guap Dad trending yesterday along with Don Toliver, as people are like, where is this guy? So overall, they did a pretty good job like they have the past few years, because there's a lot of good choices, and it is hard to narrow it down. So I'm still quite satisfied with what was picked, and looking forward to the freestyles, however we get those on Zoom or whatever.
How do you feel about the cover, even though it wasn't in person? Feel like they did the best they could?
Yeah, I guess it's just hella Photoshop, right? But looks fine.
Yeah.
Jack Harlow showing off a lot of leg. Interesting choice here, but they did what they had to do, I guess.
It has an almost like Warped Tour vibe to it a bit.
Yeah, definitely like a poster. Feels like a poster vibe. Yep,
for sure. Well, Dave, again, well done on the picks. I'd say that even if you only got 6 of the 12 right, you still mentioned pretty much everybody else except for one. So, or even I think the one that you had beef with, you mentioned. So you have your finger on the pulse as always, and that's why people tune into this show, to keep their finger on the pulse. We're actually going to be talking about a few of these people today, but we wanted to start with a bit of a surprise release that came last Monday from the Paul Institute. We talked about Jai Paul last year,
Mm-hmm.
as he released a remastered version of some leaks, like from the early 2010s, I believe it was.
Yep.
2013?
League 413 bait ones.
Yeah.
Obviously the Jai Paul story, very interesting, very detailed. We went over that when we talked about that album, and his enigmatic presence has not changed since bait ones was officially sanctioned, and we get this Paul Institute drop from the clouds, largely heralded by his brother and collaborator AK Paul. So yeah, definitely a unexpected thing, and that's basically what all the music blogs were saying. It was like, oh crap, music from the Paul Institute, nice, because I mean, how else can you react?
And shout out, I love calling themselves an institute, where they're like, we're these producers and we're going to bring in these collaborators and let them make songs and help them make them awesome. And I actually felt like all these songs banged, dude. Like, I thought this was a really great 6-track drop. And it feels like you can tell that the Paul brothers, their own style kind of is touched all over these, but each song still feels like it kind of has its own feel to it and is individual to the artist. Some really big collaborators on here, including the track Waiting, which we added to the playlist, which has, I believe it's sorry, I wrote it down here. It has Pino Palladino, who's the bassist from The Who, who's played bass with Nine Inch Nails, John Mayer, and his daughter was the one that produced that song or made that song. Pretty amazing to get someone of that stature kind of collaborating with these very up and coming, very modern artists. But I think that just speaks to a bit of the swagger and the sway that the Paul Institute has. Which tracks did you find yourself digging most on here?
Yeah, so that song you mentioned, Waiting, from Fabiana Palladino, I thought that song was really great. I also liked the last song, the song right after that, Dynasty by Pen Pals, as well as Shadow Night by Renan? Not sure.
Renan?
Yeah. But yeah, like you said, they all have their own unique identity. They all sound pretty cool. From what I know, AK Paul actually did release Be Honest a few months ago. So I guess if you were really on the pulse of the Paul Institute, you might have been expecting this a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, I think it is cool that like this whole this incubator situation, that's the way they describe themselves. We're starting to kind of see the fruits of that, and I'm looking forward to any more drops, and hopefully maybe just starting to have a larger presence. I know they had a bit of a legal fight regarding like the building that the Institute is like based out of, like their offices and studio and stuff. So sounds like that's behind them now. So hopefully they can continue to really make some more noise. But this is really cool. I think my only gripe really is that it's kind of hard to find on streaming services because it's billed under various artists and not under like a big name like Jai Paul or the Paul Institute,
Well, and that was something I was kind of thinking about, AK Paul, like you said, dropped Be Honest, and Jai Paul hasn't dropped, new music on his own in quite some time. And these artists are fairly unknown, unless you're, I think, really on the pulse of these up and coming creators. And I guess I'm wondering, do you think we're ever going to get like a AK Paul or Jai Paul released on their own, or do you think they're going to be more of like the production side of things, like kind of making music but more so collaborating with people?
Yeah, that's a great question. I really have no idea, because they both seem to be interested in both as creators and producers and mentors of talent and stuff. So they really seem to be involved in all aspects of the game, which is cool. But yeah, I mean, tough to be confident, right? I mean, given how long they've been musicians, right? Haven't heard a whole lot, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's the sort of thing I think where I imagine at some point we'll either get like the Paul brother drop or something like that, but I just get the sense from them it's going to be like these small packs of songs and maybe not that big advertised album. That just doesn't seem like that's their style right now, but who knows? Maybe as the Institute continues to grow, we'll see more and more of that. Why don't we move on though to City Morgue? Sauce Mula and Zilla Kami. Is that right?
Yeah.
Zilla Kami?
Zilla Kami and Sauce Mula, you got it. Very interested to see how you felt about this trap metal rap rock duo.
Yeah, they dropped Toxic Boogaloo last week, which boy, not what I expected really. Although if you even just look at the cover of it, you kind of know like you're going into something that's a little bit more probably hardcore. And man, I actually was pretty impressed with how they were able to take these two genres that I don't think you would usually think of together that mesh well. I mean, there's always been rock and hip hop trying to meld together, whether it's Lil Wayne or you go as far back as Run DMC and Aerosmith. But I feel like this was a really I don't know if even well done is the right way to put it, but it just seemed to flow better than those sorts of collaborations. This feels like a true metal hip hop duo. And I mean, even though I think it got a little bit grating at times and I think a little bit repetitive, I think the sound doesn't vary a lot throughout the album. It's short. It's like 10 tracks in like 18 or like 20 minutes or something like that.
Right.
There are some definite highs, and I think that they're a very interesting group to keep their pulse on. How did you feel about Toxic Boogaloo?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been checking in. City Morgue dropped 2 mixtapes since the end of 2018, and Zilla Kami might ring a bell to some people because he was featured on Denzel Curry's Taboo and also on the Powers Pleasant single Please Forgive. So he's been around a little bit, but honestly, I didn't really know who Zilla Kami was until he started making music with 6ix9ine. Zilla Kami is largely responsible for 6ix9ine's image and style. You can watch early videos where 6ix9ine doesn't really have a lot of tattoos yet, but he's kind of doing this like really aggressive yelling style with Zilla. And for Zilla, it always has come across as genuine and real, and he's kept this musical identity to this point. Obviously, we know 6ix9ine is just kind of a poser.
You don't say.
And and they since have beef and don't fuck with each other at all, and it's kind of been interesting to read more about that. But I agree. I think the lyrics are incredibly repetitive, and in general, it's a pretty one-note project, Toxic Boogaloo. But like I said, I do think it does come across as pretty genuine, and I think you can still have a lot of fun to this. I think the biggest highlight to me was one of the singles would be Hurt World 99, just because that song is like incredibly sticky. And again, even if it's not like the super lyrical thing, just like the HURT, like hook to it all, like I think it's pretty fun. So
yeah,
they're definitely not for everyone though.
No, certainly not. I agree. I think Hurt World 99 is probably like the anthem song on here, and the one that it sticks out the most as probably the most re-listenable. But I actually really love the beat on You Can SMD. There's this like really awesome part, I feel like, where like it kind of drops out and these like distorted like synths or something like that come in. It's like a really awesome moment on the album, and one that definitely stood out. And on Yakuza, were they intentionally doing Little John like what? Like I really was like, man, I wonder if this is an homage or just kind of how things came out for them. But I think they're interesting, with artists like this who are kind of making this the sound that feels so unique to them. I think the challenge, kind of like you were kind of pointing out, is how do they expand it and vary it to make it feel not so repetitive? And I think as they move forward as a duo and whatever we see them doing next, I hope they do find a way to vary it up but kind of stay genuine. That's always the hard part with stuff like this. Any last thoughts on them though before we move on?
Yeah, I think even if they never really branch out too much from this, I think they still have a pretty solid lane, because you can just see them fitting in, like opening up for other artists that are kind of adjacent to the dabbling in rock stuff. Think of like Suicide Boys or Puya. Again, I think they opened up for Denzel once before already, but like you can kind of see this because they kind of represent that Venn diagram that has started to come back into focus with rap and rock. So definitely interesting. And these guys are from New York, because New York is fucking vibrant all over the place, as we know.
Yeah. When you mentioned Denzel Curry, that really feels kind of like that's sort of the blueprint for them to follow if they're going to become more mainstream. But why don't we move on to another New York artist, Nyck Caution, dropping Open Flame.
Yes, sir.
I can't remember. Have we talked about him on the pod? Did we talk about Nick and Knight with Kirk Knight?
We did not talk about Nick and Knight. That's a oversight by me. But we've only talked about Nick and his relationship to Pro Era and Joey. Yeah. Notably, big feature on Ring the Alarm on Joey's last album, and of course, a big part of the Beast Coast album from last year. But we haven't talked about any of his other stuff. His last solo project was Disguise the Limit way back in 2016. Which has one of his biggest songs, What's Understood. But yeah, haven't talked about him yet. And he's been quiet, though. So it makes sense. I'm
laughing.
This quick little EP.
Yeah. And I'm laughing just looking at your screen because him in the Leonardo DiCaprio, like his face photoshopped over Leo in that picture is just, it's chef's kiss, man. It's so perfect. This EP was pretty interesting, right? So I think there's some really great moments on here, and then just some stuff I'm like, okay, pretty forgettable. But I think the place we kind of have to start is Margot Robbie, right? Like that's the bop off this one, the one that's Correct. Getting radio play, the one that's getting attention. How'd you feel about Margot Robbie?
Yeah, I mean, that's classic PE. That's classic Beast Coast, right? That is some old school boom bap production, traditionalist flow, right? But it's also littered with lots of quotables from a competent rapper. So it's kind of that formula we come to expect if you're fans of these people. But yeah, I mean, I think Margot Robbie's total banger. And the line that fucking hits me is like, was it told me it would be better next year, but I'm a Knicks fan or something. And it's like, God, man, that sucks because that's accurate. Yeah, no, I like Margot Robbie a lot. That reminds me a lot of like classic Joey, like 1999 stuff. So that's definitely a highlight.
Yeah, I also thought it was nice to hear Michi Darko from Flatbush Zombies on Familia. I thought that was a pretty solid track. And the last one too, Slipping Away. I really liked how it was a lot smoother of a track than the other ones. It wasn't as like bouncy. It was just more like gliding over the beat. And I think like the first track, Demons Don't Take Off From Work, and More Than I Deserve with Flip De Niro. I wasn't like super taken by those tracks, kind of forgettable, but it seems like from reading about this drop, Open Flame, this is kind of like the primer for a bigger album later on, that these songs don't really fit onto the album in nice terms sign. Of which I think is great, that he has just these loosies he can drop that are this high quality, and that he has something a little bit bigger, a little bit more curated that's going to be coming out down the line. So I'm definitely looking forward to that.
Yeah, More Than I Deserve, I agree. It doesn't wow you, but it did stand out to me because he's using a different flow than that classic Nick, that classic throwback New York flow. And that kind of reminded me of like on Beast Coast with Coast Clear, where he's doing a little bit of something outside his comfort zone. So interested to see if that next album, next mixtape, whatever it is, if there is more of that diversification of sound. Because again, like even if he doesn't want to do that, he just wants to make some traditionalist stuff. There's still an audience for that. And yeah, you'll never become a superstar doing that, but you can still be very successful. So it sounds like he's, like a lot of the Beast Coast guys, open to more things as well. So that's cool. Actually, Famiglia was interesting to me because I thought the Meech mix on his verse wasn't that strong. Like I had to listen to it again. I was like, I can't really. I had a hard time picking out some of his lyrics, which is not normally the case. So I wonder if I don't know who mixed it. I wonder if that was a product of quarantine. I don't know, but I do like the song though.
Yeah, I think overall this is a solid EP. I'm looking forward to the bigger album down the line. I think, Dave, we gotta go from East Coast to West Coast here. Talking Shoreline Mafia. Mafia Bidness. Yeah, Shoreline, not a group that I feel like I've been paying much attention to. Is this a group you've been really tuned into?
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah,
Tell me why.
I'm a huge fan of Shoreline Mafia. They blew up in end of 2017 into 2018, dropping that debut mixtape Shoreline Do That Shit, which they then re-released in the spring of 2018 when they signed to Atlantic Records. And the lead up to that mixtape, they saw a number of really big songs: Musty, None Major. This is a four-piece outfit from LA, diverse group of guys: OGZ, Phoenix Flexin, Rob Vicious, and Master Kato. And they just kind of started taking over LA, just selling out fucking shows constantly, and just kind of quickly developed a rabid and diverse fan base. And that's an interesting thing to note, is that in a melting pot city like LA, having a diverse group of GZ is Mexican, Phoenix is light skin, the other guys are black, and seeing kind of that range of fans coming together around their music, and those LA fans seeing the LA nature in their music, and it all coming across quite genuinely, is cool to see. And you can read there's a nice story from 2018 in Fader by Paul Thompson that kind of goes into that. And I think what stood out to me first about Shoreline Mafia, you hear these songs, and some of them, I think the case with this new album, Mafia Bidness, was also the case on their mixtape, some of their EPs, where not every song is all for the guys. They kind of take their turn. Sometimes it's a solo song, or just one of them with a feature that's not from the group, right? And they've reiterated this in interviews that they're really confident in their own individual identities, but still very much dedicated to this group, to this foursome. And I think that's really cool to see, because I think a lot of times when we hear groups and someone stands out more than the other ones, in this case, it would definitely be OGZ and Phoenix, who just rap more than the other two. What we did with Sway Lee, what we did Quavo, it's like, oh, you should go solo, you should leave these guys behind. And it's cool to see that they are really like self-aware about that kind of stuff and not really interested in that. Also, on that mixtape, Shoreline Do That Shit, on songs like None Major and What's the Deal, and I think Musty too, they intersplice this audio from a local Fox 11 news report, in which that Fox station showed Shoreline Mafia music videos and them like pouring like codeine into their drinks and sipping lean, and like you hear these real quotes, and like when I heard them, I'm like, oh, that must be fake, but it was actually real. And like it was kind of like viral marketing that this Fox news station did for this group. And like the best part is you have this quote from this anchor, and she's like, when asked for comment, Shoreline responded, "Expletive Fox, we sip juice for life." And I'm like, that had to be fake, but it was literally on TV. It was not fake.
What a line.
And it's like, obviously I don't support like abusing lean, like RIP ASAP Yams. And like, I hope these guys take care of themselves. OGZ has put on some weight since he blew up, so like, please take care. But this shit's hilarious, right? Mm-hmm. And it's kind of just been a slow burn leading up to this album, their first big release on Atlantic Records. And while I don't think this is nearly as strong as that early stuff, this is definitely a bloated album. It does have a lot of the qualities I still like from the group. So I think they're interesting to me because it didn't seem like they've had a big pop in the East Coast, but they are rock stars already on the West Coast.
Yeah, I think you kind of summed up my thoughts really well. Going back and listening to some of the hits off, like you mentioned, None or Musty, I found myself listening to this album, and it was almost kind of like, oh, this song bops, and the next one I'm like, okay. Just not much. And then maybe a track or two later, like, oh, here we go. Like, and it would pop back up, and it felt like it was like pockets of really great songs, and then some songs that just fell totally flat for me. And I felt like when I was probably most engaged was when the music was a bit more bouncy, like a little bit more upbeat. I think when they tried to go a little bit more melodic or a little bit more downbeat, I found myself tuning out a bit.
Yeah, I totally agree. You think of a song like Change Your Life, where that's just OGZ and Phoenix, and that's them You know, that's them talking about like, because like I mean, their music is pretty simple. Like lyrics wise, it's all about having sex and getting fucked up. Basically, it's pretty straightforward stuff. But it's great party music. And Change Your Life is interesting because it's still about having sex, but it's how like they're like really good dudes still, and they'll treat you right if you're having sex with them. And it's like the different side of that same coin, but because it's more stripped down and almost R&B indebted, you're like, do I want this from these guys? Me, not really.
Right.
And I think, you know, it's interesting. You look at this and you're like, oh, there's a Future feature. That screams Atlantic Records made this. But you also have a Wiz feature, which is kind of weird that these guys would make a song with Wiz. But that song does kind of stand out to me because it's, you know, they're interpolating Montel Jordan. This is how we do it. You know, it's like, all right, that's pretty sweet. And, you know, on Run It Back, the first real song, O'Jeezy's doing a Juvenile's Back That Ass Up flow to start the song. Right. And it's like, I mean, yeah, I'm fucking here for that stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I think overall, it's tough. And, you know, tacked on at the end, you got Bands, which already came out almost 2 years ago, their biggest song. But we still have some other moments too. Like I thought Gangsters and Sippa's a lead single. That's probably my favorite beat of the year because of that beat flip about 30 seconds in where those horns come in. I think that shit absolutely rules. And then Fuck It Up with Mike Sherm. We talked about Mike Sherm briefly because he was featured on that Pilo album last year. He just fucking spazzes on that song. And honestly, I think he really steals it from Phoenix. But yeah, I mean, if you're a Shoreline fan, there are things to like here. But overall, this was a little too dense for me, which I'm not concerned. But yeah, it's a little bloated.
Yeah, it kind of just screams like first major label album where they just want to get like everything out. And I think the more that they're testing stuff and seeing what hits, they're probably going to refine a little bit more, take some more calculated chances. Whereas here it was just like, let's just get all of our ideas out and see what kind of hits. And also, I mean, especially in the age of streaming, having more songs for people to go through is never necessarily a bad thing. So I think it's a decent first drop. And we've already added a couple of songs from the albums we've been talking about to our Nowstalgia Best of 2020 playlist. So search for that on Spotify and give it a follow. You know, you mentioned XXL at the beginning. We're actually talking about an album, a fairly long album, one of them. NLE Choppa dropping Choppa.
Top Shotta. Sorry, I couldn't find my notes here. Which, you know, he dropped Cottonwood, probably a mixtape, but however, by whatever debut
standards.
EP mixtape back in December, his first official release. Only just now, only 17 still.
And kind of crazy that, you know, he's only 17 and dropping an album like Top Shotta. Because while I think the first half of Top Shotta is, you know, it's maybe not the most succinct part of the album. I think the second half has a clear vision to it. Even if I don't know if those songs hit as well as some of the more upbeat songs, I think when he is trying to go to a deeper place in terms of his lyrical content and just the topics he's talking about, I think it's impressive that he's trying to kind of hone in on certain ideas instead of just putting music out. So I guess, like, to summarize my review, it's decent, but I respect like the vision on it, and I think that's a good sign for Choppa for his longer career. Where are you at with it though?
Yeah, that's very similar how I feel too, because NLE got big really fast at the beginning of 2019 for his ridiculous energy on the mic with Shotta flow. And then he kept that going with, I think, the superior song, Camelot, which is on this album, Top Shotta. And it's like, you see that, like, this guy just has really aggressive, punchy bars and youthful exuberance, which would make sense because, again, he was blowing up when he was 16. And you get more of that on this debut album, like you said, in the beginning. And I think when it works best is songs like Double Back and Make 'Em Say with Mulatto, who's now joining him on the XXL Freshman cover. But I was surprised to see such introspection at the end the second half of this album, because again, he's so new to this that you just really wouldn't even hold that against someone of this age and this lack of experience, right? Yet he's willing to kind of open up and I guess maybe soften up a bit too, and talking about literally songs called Paranoid and Depression. It's like he's being pretty upfront about it. And I don't know if the way he's doing that right now is something I want from him. Like, I still think his strength, obviously, right now is lower stakes, high energy. But the fact that he's willing to do this, I think is a good sign, and speaks to longevity. You would hope. I think, and that perhaps thoughtfulness maybe does make sense, because he blew up last year. He never signed a major deal. He was using United Masters, the independent distribution company, and he became a millionaire independently, kept all his masters in publishing through all of that year. And I believe now he is in fact signed to Warner Records, but it seems like he was able to negotiate much more control over his career and get, I think, some higher payouts than the traditional teenage upstart rapper. So seems like he's got a good head on his shoulders too, despite what some of the songs might lead you to believe. So yeah, it's ultimately a mixed bag in terms of songs you want to hear, but in terms of like investment in the career and justifying the freshman status, I think it's earned.
When you're saying that that's what, like, these songs are not what you want to be hearing from him, is that because you feel like, in terms of getting into that deeper lyrical content, maybe these more heavy songs, he's not like able to craft as well right now as he is these bangers? Okay, yeah, I think.
Yeah, I just don't think I listen to them right now. It's like no offense, it's just like these aren't really hitting right now. So
right,
hopefully that comes in time.
And it's funny to be like thinking about the album and thinking like the second half was probably, I think, the better vision, with the first half just being the more enjoyable one to listen to, even if it was kind of all over the place. I think in terms of like there wasn't anything tying these songs together. So I guess in that sense I almost saw this as a double album. In terms of that first half though, I think the song Make 'Em Say with Mulatto was probably one of the ones that stood out to me. I think she comes on and really like injects a different energy into the song, which I thought was great. You mentioned Camelot already, which I thought was really good. What other songs on this actually stood out to you?
Yeah, like I said, double back. I think Walk 'Em Down's interesting to me because that's become a big hit for him, featuring Roddy Ricch. And for whatever reason, that song doesn't really do much for me. I don't really have anything bad to say about it. Just doesn't hit the right way. I don't know, but it seems to be successful for him. I don't know if we need all of Shotta Flow 3, 4, and 5, but I do like Shotta Flow 5 quite a bit as well.
Yeah, Shotta Flow 5 definitely stood out to me. Any on the back half that you liked?
I guess Paranoid probably the best. The fact that he has the Warner deal now probably speaks to how he has a little baby feature. But I thought Narrow was just okay. But I think fans of new fans of NLE probably will have some things to like here.
Definitely. We're definitely gonna put probably one of these songs onto our Spotify playlist. So again, tune into that. And I'm sure we'll also be putting a song from Aminé on there, dropping Limbo, first project since 0.5 back in 2018. Obviously, Aminé kind of came onto the scene with his 2017 project, Good For You. Really, I think, established himself as this lighthearted, fun, upbeat rapper that seemed to kind of be carefree in a lot of senses. And then you listen to 0.5 just a year later and really switched direction, going in a more trap direction. I think lyrically, not nearly as strong. And it kind of left, I think, us in our review feeling like we're not really sure exactly where Aminé is going here, whether he's trending in the right or wrong direction. After listening to Limbo, how are you feeling about Aminé?
I'm feeling good, dog.
Same.
I like Limbo a lot. This is strong, man. Like you said, with Good For You, not only did that establish him as someone who could really make this kind of carefree, vibing hip hop, but it also validated him to a lot of people who had no idea who the fuck he was until Caroline gets to number 11 in the country. He kind of proved that he was a real artist and not just a one hit wonder flash in the pan. But then, like you said, that 1.5, it's just like, man, like, this ain't special. This is not why we like Aminé. And not that you need to do the same thing all the time, but this right here is not going to stand out all that much. And I did like reel it in, you know, and that song did go platinum for him. But like hearing Limbo, it's like, wow, yeah, see this, he just immediately feels way more wizened and like wise beyond his years all of a sudden, despite the fact it's only 26. And it's like, you know, you can read, there's a Portland, it's a GQ profile where he speaks about being a rapper from Portland, a place that does not have really any hip hop community at all, and it's a place that does not have a lot of diversity. You know, it's a, you know, quote, liberal place, but mainly white people, right? And he's kind of struggling with what he sees in his hometown stuff. Interesting to hear, and we kind of thought he was a thoughtful guy already, but you know, you listen to this album, and I think he covers a lot of ground while still making some really fucking hard-hitting songs, you know. But like you listen to a song like Mama at the end or Fetus, right? And he's like really talking about, you know, and like the whole thing of like taking care of your mom once you make it is not a new idea in music, but I think he gets it in a nice way. And even Fetus is, I think, quite interesting just because while someone like NLE Choppa just kind of mentions offhand that he has a baby mom, I mean, he's talking about how it's like, man, you gotta make sure you're ready for this. And I don't know if I am yet, but if I do, this is what I want to do. And it's like, wow, you know, this is cool. But like, yeah, I'm not going to probably revisit those songs all that much, but what I'm going to revisit is stuff like My Reality, which is just straight up jazz rap cut, you know, indebted to Kanye. And something Woodlawn's not that different from 1.5, but man, does that shit fucking slap, you know? So I like this a lot.
Yeah, you know, in talking about the projects that came before this, Limbo feels like a direct follow-up to Good For You, because I think where Good For You kind of is that carefree, almost like kid-like sound where he's so just like an up-and-coming, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed person. Kobe feels like kind of the tone setter for this album, where it's like, yeah, I was a kid, and when Kobe died, like, this is where I'm at now. This is the transition for me into being an adult, being a man, not being as carefree, but still kind of holding on to what it means to be Aminé. And I feel like he really gets at that through this album, where, like you said, he balances that Good For You sound and that vibe, while also sprinkling in songs about being a more mature adult, being more introspective about life. I think you really hit on a couple of them. I think the song Kobe is also an introspective song about grief and about how these events kind of and these people that you look up to really shape the way you see and understand the world, and just the way you see and understand yourself within that world. So I mean, I just am impressed because after 1.5, it just felt like, is he just chasing the sound? Is he just chasing whatever he thinks will get him to that level next? But this feels more like an artist who is understanding who they are and what music they want to make, and that's really exciting.
Yeah, I think there's just tons of cool moments too. Like on My Reality, the last track, was it AI when it comes to the checks? I'm like, taxes, you know, obviously Allen Iverson reference.
Yeah.
And then even like the lead single Shimmy, where he, you know, it's obvious homage to Old Dirty Bastard, the classic song that interplays at the end. It's like really cool to hear that stuff. And you know, I believe he's worked with Charlie Wilson before, but I did quite enjoy Roots, and I thought the JID feature was especially strong. One of the unexpected moments for me was on Pressure in My Palms. The fact that Slow Tie and Vince Staples actually share one verse, and they both crush it. Vincent Matinka really floats on that beat, but they don't outshine Aminé, who lets them go first basically, and then takes it home. So. And even the
such
first
a cool
track,
moment.
I thought Burden really hit too, you know, and you want the carefree, low stakes Aminé. I think compensating with Thugger is really good as well. So I think there's a ton here, a lot of replay value, and at the end of the day, it's really exciting that Aminé really seems to have kind of found found his direction. That's great.
Definitely agree. And it's funny hearing you mention all these songs because I'm agreeing with you as you're mentioning, like, oh, this song is great for this reason. And you probably didn't even mention the song I like the most, which is Becky. I just really feel like that feels like such a true Aminé sound. I think the lyrics in there and the way that he kind of switches up his flow a little bit on the chorus, just it all works so well. So, I think this is definitely a success and such a step in the right direction for Aminé. Definitely check out the album if you haven't. And again, check out the Spotify playlist. All right, Dave. Well, we saved the most interesting probably for last here. Dominic Fike. Now, this is an album that came out 2 weeks ago. We weren't able to talk about it because, again, power issues. But I think we were really excited to get to this because Dominic Fike is a pretty interesting figure in music. And I think his debut album, What Could Possibly Go Wrong, is an inconsistent, but I think very fascinating debut album. Now, Fike is kind of a collaborator or part of the cohort of one of your favorite groups, right?
Yeah, I don't think I really know who Dominic Fike was until Brockhampton posted on their YouTube channel a video titled "This is Dominic Fike," and I'm like, huh. Well, if they care about him, maybe I should take a peek and figure out why. Then I think around that same time, it must have been already out by now, but you hear Three Nights, which was that one really big single off that Don't Forget About Me demos project from October 2018. And Three Nights, I feel like that must have been some commercials, right? Like I feel like I heard that song a lot, but I was looking, it never actually charted here in the States, and actually was a much bigger track for Fike in Europe, surprisingly enough. But that's a song that got a lot of like internet attention for kind of being like a throwback pop, like soft pop sound, right? And having to kind of like that really like sticky melody and stuff on top of that. And then you read about Fike inspiring a label bidding war off that demo project, which was just like thrown up on SoundCloud really nondescriptly. And that ended in Columbia Records signing him. And they actually took down that music. I didn't know about this after the fact, but apparently that demo tape at one point was unavailable until Columbia remixed and reposted it like officially so they could really like, get the streams coming in and stuff. Then he gets so you got the Kevin Abstract cosign, you get the Billie Eilish cosign. Then Dom pops up on Kevin's solo album on Peach, which I think was one of the highlights off Arizona Baby. And then what? Like, we're just waiting, right? We were waiting for this guy who it's like, you can just, you feel about Dominic Fike's music and the way everyone in the industry is talking about him. This is someone who has real star potential, and being indebted to the past in pop is not new right now. It's pretty popular, but I don't know if anyone's really doing exactly what Fike tries to do all that much in terms of like that emo pop, that soft pop, right? And like even pop rock a little bit, And we finally got that debut album on Columbia Records. And Pat, what did you think after all this time, after quite a considerable amount of hype? What could possibly go wrong? Did something go wrong?
It's fine. It's kind of where I'm at with it. I think this album is a bit of a letdown because there had been so much hype. I mean, someone that young and unproven getting a $4 million record deal is a hefty place to start with some expectations. And he's obviously a bit of a, I don't want to say troubled, but he's had some issues. 2018 arrest for assault. Didn't he then like break probation too during that, something along those lines?
Yeah, it's a little vague exactly what happened, but
so he's had some stuff going on, and I think that comes across here. But mostly, I think I was taken aback with some of the tones on this album in terms of lyrical content.
There's one moment that really stands out.
Yeah, and I maybe we should just jump right into it. Cancel Me. I'm guessing you're talking about. Yeah, Cancel Me. Almost, I think, colored the rest of the album for me in a way, right? Because Cancel Me just feels like such an immature and uninformed perspective on like the whole like Me Too movement
Mhm.
and you know, having appropriate sexual relationships and treating people with respect, kind of, and using that as like almost a way to like get away from stardom and you know how hard it is to be famous and have people know you. After hearing it, I just kind of approached the rest of the album as, oh, this is a person that hasn't really totally thought out everything that's on here. And that's kind of, I think, how I see this album is I think there's like glimmers of moments where you can see like, oh, this kid someday is going to make like an album that's going to be a fucking banger. Like he's going to have like the huge teen following where people are just really into it. But I just don't think he's there yet. And I think he's still kind of refining himself as an artist. And I don't know. How did you feel about Cancel Me though?
Yeah, I mean, in a sense, so I think the song itself actually sounds pretty good, but in a sense, like that's a very modern young person way of thinking about making a song about getting away from stardom and fame and all that, right? And it's like I in a sense I can almost appreciate that, and being more vague about saying like hope they cancel me, right? No, it's cool, but at the end when he says I hope I get Me Too'd, it's like, dude, like it's not just some like prop that happens to people. Like there is reasons behind this, whether it's even real or not, right? And it's like it's just kind of a gross thing to hear. It's like I hope I get Me Too'd. It's like, nah, man, like you gotta take it back a step, I think. But yeah, I mean, to your point, I agree that, you know, he reminds me of Little Peep, where it's like all this musical promise. Multiple genres, everyone heaping praise, and yet we're not getting the return on that praise at this time. It's all theoretical. Reminding me a lot of Little Peep right now. But I think he's further along Little Peep was. I do think there's some sticky songs still, and even Phone Numbers, the loose single from I think last year that didn't make it on this. I think that song's great. You know, I think there are moments where he can really shine, and he just doesn't seem to have any kind of focus, though, on what could possibly go wrong. And I think that is ultimately what went wrong.
You know, before we move on from Cancel Me, I did have one thought while listening to it, which is he may be making a commentary on how people getting canceled don't actually get canceled now. You know, how like there's actually no consequences, or it seems like very little consequences for those sorts of things actually happening. And I feel like potentially that's part of the message he was trying to portray, you know, wishing that these things would happen just because all that really happens is you're out of the limelight for a little while, and that's what it seems like he wants is a break sometimes. But I think if that is it, he failed a bit in getting that message across, and like you kind of pointed out, instead just comes across as gross and unthoughtful. So and I think that kind of speaks to what you're saying, like there's I think a lot of potential here, but it's not fully formed. Like at points in the album, it really felt like he was almost like a darker Zoomer version of Ed Sheeran in ways, you know, kind of with that, like, I don't think obviously to the level of like the melody and creating hooks, but I think just like the sound, it's almost like a Jack Johnson-y acoustic, like pop sound that really like vibes. Like when he flips, J-Lo on
Vampire.
The song Vampire.
Yeah.
Like that moment is just like, you're just like, oh fuck, this is great. But then so many other moments on the album just feel like they're almost there and they don't quite hit. So I don't know. I saw your reaction when I said like a Zoomer Ed Sheeran. What are your thoughts around that?
That's just funny. That's just funny. And yeah, Vampire's I think a good look at that, right? Because Vampire so blatantly uses the melody of the chorus of If You Had My Love by Jennifer Lopez, yet the song is still really catchy and good, you know. And I don't know if he had to split his publishing for that. It is pretty blatant, you know. We've seen lawsuits regarding production and stuff for way less at this point, you know, so I wouldn't be surprised if something like that happens. I don't know. But yeah, that was definitely a moment for me. I think Chicken Tender's a little lower stakes song. That song sounds pretty nice as well. I saw Politics and Violence getting some buzz. That song really doesn't do much for me, but like that's where I think a little peep again, because that's a song where like the vocals are like intentionally like muffled and like not like vampire, you know, and it's just like maybe you could do something really cool with this type of sound, but just to throw it on there at the end of the album, basically, it's like, I don't know, it didn't do much for me, especially 2 songs after Vampire. And you know, there's a doc episode of the New York Times documentary series on Hulu right now about Dominic Fike. You can learn more about that story there, but yeah, this was disappointing, and I've struggled to listen to this just to grapple with the whole album, because I was obviously really in on that hype, you know, and like I mean, I feel like the legend was starting to tell itself too. It's like, man, he's on house arrest and he independently produces this demo tape and throws it on SoundCloud. And it's like, that is shades of Chance the Rapper making 10 Day while he's suspended from school. It's the same thing, you know, and so far, 1 album in, one official full length in, he's still finding himself. That's okay, but I just wanted more now.
The best is definitely still yet to come for him, but we threw Vampire on our playlist because we like that. And I think now it's time to move on to TV. Talk about something else that I liked, at least. I'm wondering if you liked it, The Umbrella Academy Season 2, which I'm saying in this tone because I did not expect to like this that much. We talked about Season 1, which I think to summarize our thoughts, it had glimpses and moments of some cool stuff, but overall was a bit of a mess and heavy and not well paced and I think poorly written and plotted out at points, ending in now that I'm reflecting on it, a pretty bizarre finale, I feel like, in a lot of ways, like playing that violin as the moon exploded, just very, very strange. But Season 2, you know, they time jump in order to try to go back to avoid the apocalypse. And they go back to Dallas in 1963, about 10 days before JFK is shot. Now they all come back at different times and they live life in Dallas for their own separate periods of time leading up to when they all come together about 10 days before. But how did you feel about just like the setup of this season and then just like the overall feel of the Umbrella Academy Season 2?
Well, that's what's so funny to me is when I was going in to watch episode 1, I went back to watch the like recap that Netflix usually has for returning series, and even watched our review of Season 1. And I still had a lot of gaps. I was like, I still don't remember a whole lot from Season 1 beyond that I didn't really like it all that much. And I was like, this is not a good sign or a good starting place.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think Season 2, I think it's still less than the sum of its parts as a season of TV. There's still standout moments and things to like about it. But for me, the narrative is just really kind of suspect and kind of picks and chooses when it cares about certain rules it establishes. And usually I'm not even really a stickler for that, but it did feel like we kind of dragged our feet with things. And again, there's some things I really did like. I think spoilers, Ritu Arya, who plays Leela, like a freaking steals every scene she's in. I thought she was fantastic.
She's great, man.
But on the other hand, I'm like, man, you have this whole story around the JFK assassination, and Luther comes back and he's working for Jack Ruby, and like what you did with that just wasn't that cool. Like there was so much potential there, and I'm like, I feel like Watchmen was way more interesting when they barely alluded to the fact that the comedian killed Kennedy, right? And it's like that let me down. I even thought the stuff with the civil rights movement and like the sit-ins and stuff, I ultimately thought that was kind of boilerplate, you know. I also thought that could have done more. And you know, I think the key thing about the season, right, is that everyone's separated, so we have all these different subplots. And for me, I think some of them just hit way better than other ones. But
for sure,
definitely has good moments.
Yeah, you know, I think what I liked most about this season is last season they really leaned into like the family trauma aspect of it, which is fascinating from a psychological perspective, but from like a TV enjoyable perspective, like this is way more Marvel than Watchmen. And if you're going to go the Watchmen route, you need to be a lot more well written and thought out than this show really is, which is fine. Like, it's fine being just a superhero show, and when it's sillier, when it leans on the action fight scenes set to like a fun song, whether it's Backstreet Boys or
So many.
Yeah,
Billy
there's so
Idol,
many. Yes,
Styx,
Billy Idol.
Kiss.
Like, yeah, the soundtrack on this is great. And when it leans on those moments, you're like, okay, the show has some great stuff. I think when it goes more into the relational side of things is when things kind of fall apart a bit. And I also think the story with the handler and what's the name of the organization she works for?
Mission.
Yes. When it comes to them, I just kind of don't care and don't get it.
Yeah, no, that shit just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And that's why I can't invest so much in the narrative, because there's just shit is just confusing and is really unclear, right? And then, like, I think about like Five, who Five is more or less the driving force through most of the season once again. And on its face, a very interesting idea, and there's cool stuff with him, but it's like, why can the guy who can teleport wherever he wants and also kind of control teleporting back and forth through time now, which was an issue originally, why is he just waiting in the back alley for everyone to show up at the designated time and not just going to find everyone? Like, why is that like a pain point for him? That felt really contrived to me. And like, I was like, why is this confusing? Why is this the way it is? You know? I also thought that the Swedish trio of assassins, they felt really unnecessary, but also they just weren't as cool or interesting as Hazel and Cha-Cha from season 1. Yeah. Cameron Britton and Mary J. Blige. You know, it's like they also didn't really add up. And I honestly, like, I'm curious to see how you feel about Vanya, because her subplot's one of the bigger ones, and I honestly still find her quite the tough hang. You know, on one hand, I'm sure Ellen Page was really happy to portray a lesbian relationship on screen. I'm sure she was really, really excited about that. But for me, it just kind of felt really bogged down. There's a lot of like really predictable beats about that one. Yeah, how'd you feel about Vanya this season?
Yeah, Vanya last season was such a downer. I was almost happy to just see her getting a somewhat normal character arc in a way, where she has her own subplot and she learns she has powers. The fact that she doesn't have memory, it kind of allows her to not be totally burdened by the fact that she caused the apocalypse prior, and to kind of have some cognitive dissonance, which I think is necessary, because that character is such an empathetic character that if she knew that right from the get-go, she would probably say she should just kill herself.
She's literally Jean Grey in Dark Phoenix. That's
right.
It's so similar.
Right. And I was just happy to see her get where it wasn't the same thing, because that was kind of my worry. When she didn't remember who she was, that she was going to like learn she had these powers, kind of uncover her past, and then she was just going to become the atomic bomb again. And seeing Ben kind of get a chance to do more than just be Klaus's sidekick and actually have like a nice moment was cool. And it seems like he's going to be more of part of the series moving forward, which is also cool. And also having like the final scene not be Vanya, going dark Phoenix, but actually like the family thing works out was kind of nice. So there was like some good moments, but overall, I don't know if like the stuff with the family really hit with me. Like I think Harlan, I don't give a shit about Harlan, not gonna lie.
No.
And the relationship between Ellen Page and I'm forgetting the other actress's name.
Yeah,
didn't really.
Was the name.
It felt a bit. I don't know if it felt like it was totally earned. Like, and I guess maybe we're supposed to believe that the relationship grew faster than maybe it's portrayed on screen. But I just kind of felt like it went from being like Harlan's caretaker to now all of a sudden in this relationship. So
right.
I don't know. And then I was also wondering how you felt about the civil rights stuff.
Yeah,
I was a bit up and down on that.
Yeah, no, I thought it was really boilerplate, really down the middle, and it's like you have this ability to tell rumors and influence people's actions. I understand, how time travel in mediums, right? You don't want to fuck up the past, the future too much, right? So I understand why she didn't go OD with that, but she also never expressed that thought to like Five or Luther or anything. And it's like, it almost seemed like she was just kind of twiddling her thumbs as a character, and it was kind of strange to me. I did like the guy, I forget his name, the actor who played her husband, though. Thought he was pretty good.
Yeah, Ray.
Yeah, he was good. And to circle back, you mentioned Ben. I thought Ben, when he takes over Klaus's body, and then when he's just talking to people, and he's like talking to Vanya, he's like, "Hey, can you hold me while I go?" And it's like, as you said, I think it was really nice to see Ben, this version of the Ben character, who we only know as the Ghost, have more to do and kind of have a circle complete and have that arc kind of land, I think, in a good way. Overall, my favorite subplot was definitely Klaus, just because he's the comic relief. He's hilarious, and like him leading this like commune like he's freaking David Koresh or something, while he doesn't even really want to do. He's trying to run away from them. They won't leave him alone. Like, there's some really good stuff with that. And I think Klaus is even more manic in season 1, but like I think there's really good potential with him. And
yeah, I agree. And Robert Sheehan's great as him.
He is, yeah. He's definitely, I think, my favorite performers. And Luther and Diego, I think they're probably still the weak links to me. Diego at least was a little cooler this time because of his links to Leela, but I mean, they're just kind of like down the middle characters. They're not that cool.
Yeah, and they're kind of set up to be the losers, right? Like everybody kind of Luther gets made fun of for his flatulence, for being like this really like big guy who eats a lot and don't make the weight joke sort of thing. And Diego's the stupid one who can't figure things out, and he kind of gets clowned on by his dad. But I actually really liked Diego's development in this season, because it feels like they're making him seem a lot more competent than he is. And I think also the way that he kind of used his like position with Leela and her putting him into the God, I really can't remember the name of that organization.
Commission.
Yeah, the commission. Sorry. The way that she kind of like brings him into the commission, he kind of uses that. Felt a bit more like a mystery type thing, or like a had to solve a problem type plot. Luther, I just don't even know where you go, because you kind of have the thing with him and his sister, and that was kind of the driving conflict for him in the first season. And now I guess the driving conflict this season was for him to, confront his dad, which I actually really liked that scene where they all sat down with Reginald Hargreaves. And I want to talk about that in a second. But really, after that, Luther's just kind of like the sidekick to Five as Five confronts his older self. I do want to say Aidan Gallagher as Five. That kid's a great performer. Like I think for all the weightlifting he had to do this season, he really kills it.
Yeah, and Aidan Gallagher's only 16 now. He might have been 15 when he shot that. It's like he is quite impressive, and like there's tons of dialogue. He's I think pretty snappy performance. He's a lot of fun for sure, and some of the detours he does, even if they don't make sense, right? It's like, why did we waste time having Five go execute the board of the commission again when he couldn't get all of his family to show up on time? It's like there's logical narrative gaps consistently through the show, but I think, as you've been saying, there are fun moments that they kind of hook you back. And even if those like, all right, here comes the fight scene with the music that and the lyrics that are really spot on to what they're feeling or doing, and it's like, I don't know if that always hits when you do it 5 times in the season, but it's still pretty enjoyable. I think overall the show looks really strong. Like,
for
it's
sure.
like really well lit. Saturation's really cool and stuff. But I just really not invested at all in the narrative, and it feels like with season 3, could again be a total reset. And I think that's a problem where you risk diminishing returns if you keep making the same mistakes when you do this like time travel stuff. So at least maybe it's going to be something different, versus. Because this time, again, it was, let's stop the apocalypse again. Yeah. It's like, you can't do that. Keep doing it that way. So we'll see.
How did you feel about that scene where they all sat down with their dad, Reginald?
Yeah, I like that. I think that's really cool, and that's some of that. And even when you see older Five as well, it's like that's like where the potential with like time travel storylines are, where it's like you interact with intelligent characters and you kind of convince them in real time of your circumstances, and you see what happens. So that's really fun. But then it's like I think it was the same episode where Reginald goes back and he kills all like those like higher up commission dudes and reveals that he's an alien or something. Like,
Yeah, I don't
like,
know
where did
what
this
he
come from?
is. Yeah, I'm very interested to figure out what he is, and that felt just totally out of nowhere. I don't think it's the same episode. I think it's actually like the second to last after JFK is killed.
Sure. Yeah, that's right.
I definitely am really interested to see more about Reginald and seeing some of the flashbacks of Reginald with his wife, like, and how they kind of developed Pogo and things like that. I thought that opening Pogo scene was actually pretty well done. And definitely I felt invested, and I didn't want to see Pogo hurt, when he had his body's all messed up. I felt really bad for him. So, I don't know, animal cruelty, not really, it's obviously animated, but makes me sad. Any last thoughts, though? I feel like we've talked enough about the Umbrella Academy.
This was season 1 was the third biggest show on Netflix in 2019, behind Stranger Things and The Witcher. So even though we don't have an official season 3 renewal, that sounds pretty darn safe to me. So gonna keep watching it. I just hope I can invest more in the story, because I struggle at times. Sometimes I think it is. I want it to be more like X-Men, and not just kind of like X-Men, because X-Men's awesome. So
how do we not have an
selfish,
X-Men?
stupid thing to wish upon this, because this is its own IP from Dark Horse. But yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
We need to get just an X-Men live action TV show going.
Oh, that'd be sick.
We just need to get it. Anyways, why don't we move on to something I think less people have watched than Umbrella Academy? Summerland.
Less people? You sure?
I don't know. I mean, how many people have seen this, you think? Like a million?
Maybe if we do the numbers in like England.
Right.
It's closer. I think it did get a theatrical release there like last year or something. But yeah, Summerland, where the living's not easy because it's World War II.
Yeah. Well, actually, Dave, I don't think this was released until July 31st of this year. So unless movie theaters are open over in England now, I don't think it's had that theatrical release yet.
I think they are a little bit, but yeah, probably not.
And this stars Gemma Arterton, Gugu Mbatha-Raw, Lucas Bond, and a couple other people. But really, I think it centers around Gemma Arterton and Gugu Mbatha-Raw as this story of this eccentric writer and this kind of orphan child during World War II. And I think this movie really surprised me. It's directed by Jessica Swale, probably her first like big directorial film. And I found this movie pretty moving in a lot of ways. I think the way that this story and this plot kind of unravels layer by layer is the most impressive piece to me, because this felt like one type of movie from the get-go, and where it finally ends up, it was really surprising. How did you feel about it, though?
Yeah, I think that's right. It's on its face as a period drama. When you start watching, you're like, oh, this isn't doing anything new, but it seems to be doing that stuff well, so that's good enough. Cool. And then as you said, there's a really, I think, expertly laid twist that I don't think you really see it coming, because you're not going into the movie expecting there to be something like that. This is not a layer I was anticipating. I think that's weaved in such a strong way that I think overall the script is just is pretty impressive for the way it tells the story. And I went into this pretty blind. I just knew this was going to be an IFC release here in the States. I know it got some love already for people that had seen it at, I think, some festivals, but not really knowing what to expect when you watch the movie. And there's kind of those like whimsy to it, right? And like you said, there's some moving moments. And I think initially it's like when they're talking about Summerland, the castle, right? And they're like looking out to sea and trying to see it. And like that moment when she storms off and then she sees the castle actually does fly green flags on the turrets. And she's like, oh, fuck, he did see it. And it's like, what? that she goes
Yeah.
back and it's this whole thing, and they start making that connection. I actually got some vibes of Miyazaki's Studio Ghibli film Castle in the Sky, actually kind of similar sense of wonder with that. But then you get that whole extra layer with Kuguma Batara's character. And initially I'm like, all right, cool, this will just be the flashbacks. And, you kind of understand that as this understated homophobia at the time, obviously, and like where that's coming. And you have this kid and this, she's kind of finding herself and being less, more social as a result of this kid. And then you realize there's this whole other relationship angle. And yeah, I thought it was done pretty well. And you even have that the classic third act thing, that race against time, gotta go get the person. Like, again, a familiar beat, but I think it's done pretty well. And in this case, it's under the pretense of the Blitz in London during World War II, and there actually is this sense of urgency, real urgency. And then I think the further surprise that Kuguma Batara's character returns like in real time to the story. So yeah, I liked it a lot.
Yeah, on its face in the first act, this story seems like a, outcast, cold, closed off person kind of thrust into this parental role, and, how her and this child are going to develop this relationship, and, the conflict around that. Will she keep him? Will she not? But like you kind of, I think, astutely laid out, this quickly becomes a movie about relationships, specifically gay relationships. I think it becomes a story about motherhood and the choices we make towards being parents or not. And I think in the end, where it kind of wraps up, and thankfully a really great place for those that are kind of fans of the characters in the story. The story about love, and a story about love on in all different ways, not only in romantic love, but parental love, friendship love. It really just surprised me, because I really felt like I had this movie tabbed as like, okay, this is like an artsier, I don't even know, like Mrs. Doubtfire or something like that. It's not obviously silly in that way, but like, parent finding what it means to be a parent and why. But definitely surprised me, and I really love that. And I thought this was shot really well. Like it really felt like you were in like the English countryside, and I'm sure it was probably shot on location in some ways. And the setting was just beautiful, like those like cliffs and being by the ocean. It almost kind of had like a Lord of the Rings type feel, like when they're in the Shire in some ways, like her little hut where they all lived. I thought that was pretty cool. So, I don't think this is a movie that obviously would have done big numbers if it was out, and it's not a movie that's going to win any awards, but it's just one of those solid, like A24 type drops. I don't even think this is an A24 movie, but
no. It's originally Lionsgate.
Yeah, it has that feel. So, and the budget was barely $1 million. It only made back 59,000. So,
well, yeah, I mean,
but yeah,
you don't hold that against
who's
it.
To say,
2020.
Right? Any other thoughts around Summerland?
No, it again, for a movie I went in with really no expectations, no knowledge of, it still managed to surprise me.
For sure.
So that was cool.
A movie I think we had a lot of anticipation around it was An American Pickle, dropped on HBO this past week, and starring Seth Rogen. It's the solo directorial debut from Brandon Trost, who's been a fairly frequent collaborator with Seth Rogen. Things like Neighbors and The Interview, or This Is the End. Also was the cinematographer for a lot of movies you've probably seen. MacGruber's probably one of the ones in there that has the most name recognition. Just before I guess we get too far into it, Seth Rogen as an actor, where are you at with him?
I mean, I loved Long Shot. That was a year ago,
right? But like, it's funny because I feel like if you had mentioned like Seth Rogen, like when Sausage Party came out, right? And now I'm trying to think of when, like,
that was like 2016, I think.
Yeah, and Jobs was 2017, I believe.
Which movie?
Jobs.
Like the Steve Jobs movie?
Where he played Wozniak.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, around that time. Yeah, 15, 16.
And if you had mentioned like Sausage Party or like This Is the End, I probably would have been like, he's fine, he's funny, he's in these like goofy like Judd Apatow like movies. Obviously, he's a product of Apatow all the way back from Freaks and Geeks. But he really has developed, I think, some really strong dramatic acting chops. And whether it's him as Wozniak or even in Long Shot, there's some moments where I think he really shines as not only just a comedic actor but just an actor in general. And I feel like he meshes this together pretty well in this film. But I feel like this film is kind of similar to Dominic Fike. I feel like it almost gets there but then falls short of it. Like it almost says something about this but then kind of falls short, and it's a bit of a like social commentary that never, I think, fully reaches its potential. How did you feel about American Pickle? Did you feel like it said what it was trying to say?
Yeah, that's interesting because again, going in, it's like this is another movie that I didn't really like. I didn't watch the trailer for American Pickle. I just kind of knew that it was coming to HBO Max after Sony sold it. I was like, okay, cool. Seth Rogen vehicle, comedy vehicle, a little rarer than you'd think of late, which, as you've been saying, they're like kind of weird thing to think about. But yeah, I mean, obviously I'm in. And this is on HBO Max, not part of that Warner Max film label, right? The union of HBO and Warner Brothers, even though they didn't actually make this movie. Yeah, but you go in like okay, it's gonna be a comedy, and like I didn't expect to have such heavier themes. Like I didn't expect that opening segment where we have that square aspect ratio and we have Herschel Greenbaum get married to Sarah Snook in black and white, and it's like, this movie is about family, I guess. And you watch the movie, and it's like also little bits of coming back to your faith in Judaism. And it's like, wow, didn't think that was going to be in here either. It's actually a bit of a Jewish film. Cool.
Yeah.
And then towards the end of the film, into the third act, we get this really modern and prescient topics, the discussion, I guess, of cancel culture and free speech and all these really in the consciousness talking points. And I'm like, wow, I again didn't really see this part coming either, but I still liked it. I thought the main premise I thought was pretty fun, and I think the most unrealistic thing to me
was the pickling of the person.
Well, besides that, it was like there's this condemned building in New York City that was just completely undisturbed this whole time, where his pickle brine was. I was like, this is New York City. Like that condemned building is still on a lot of land that's worth fucking, who knows, hundreds of thousands of dollars at least, right? I was like, this isn't realistic. But yeah, I thought it was hilarious the way they wiped away the magical realism that was someone surviving being brined in pickle brine, right? Where it's like the scientist explained it, his logic was sound, everybody was satisfied. I was like, wow, that's a really smart way to write that.
Yeah. I thought that was good too. Yeah, I agree. I think when it touches on like family dynamics and things like that, the message gets across. I think I felt like it didn't necessarily get to exactly what it was trying to say was when it was talking about things like cancel culture or making fun of like Brooklyn hipster culture and things like that.
Get your Williamsburg's jokes in. Those are still new. Jeez.
Yeah. So those sort of things I don't think hit. I think the one political joke that really hit though was how he was saying all these absurd and ludicrous things, but the second he says anything about Christians and Jesus Christ, that's when like the mob comes after him, so to speak. I thought that was a fairly interesting and astute joke. But yeah, like I really felt like the movie kept coming to something that just didn't totally hit on, but I still found Seth Rogen so enjoyable in this dual role. And the CGI and how they kind of put him together, and the acting of, obviously acting across from somebody that they then spliced together. I thought it was just really impressive. Because it never really felt to me like, these are two different people. I think there's like one shot where you see the younger Greenbaum walking ahead, and you can kind of tell it's not Seth Rogen in the shot. Like it's just like the body double. But other than that, like, it never really felt like, oh, it's two separate people, or it's not Seth Rogen. So I thought that was pretty well done. And yeah, seeing Sarah Snook, dude, like, good for her. Give Shiv all the roles.
Yeah. I was wondering, like, when you're watching, like, is this a bit role? She can come back somehow? Definitely not. She died. Makes sense.
Yeah, like everybody else during that time.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's funny, like, for a film that actually dabbles with a lot of themes and to various levels of effectiveness, I don't know. Like, I feel like I still don't have like a whole lot to share on it. It's like, it's still pretty enjoyable, and it's nice to see Seth really command a comic film, even one that has some really dramatic undertones like this one. And I think I like the way it ended too. The way he, what's Herschel and what's Ben Greenbaum?
Yeah.
The way Ben gets like fucked at the end and actually gets deported, right? And you had the whole part with like Canada leading up to that. I was like, I actually really like the way this went, and then him finding his faith a little bit and coming to grips with his new situation, and then having Herschel go back and like switch places with him again. It's like I think it's somewhat moving, for, again, a movie you're going in not expecting that at all.
Yeah, I think that part felt a little bit formulaic because, it's a bit like, all right, like the younger generation has to accept the older generation and vice versa. Like the way that Herschel gets out of it is by looking like Ben, and going back and understanding what Boop Bop means instead of it just being this like silly name. Like it's about it's a commentary on how different times, different people of different generations need to try to understand each other and not just write each other off for, one being young or one being old. But I definitely think it worked, and it was only an hour and a half. It's a pretty quick movie. It moves at a brisk pace. There's not really a lot of fat on the bone, so to speak. I wouldn't even say that there's a lot of like setups. Like, it kind of just is like plot driven comedy, I feel like, which is a bit rare for a Seth Rogen movie. But yeah, it's funny because I was really looking forward to seeing this, and I expected to kind of be blown away, and I was just kind of like, that was satisfying, but not anything that I'm probably gonna like be telling people to watch necessarily.
Probably, I'd say light on the laughs, which is not something you want from a Seth film.
Yeah, definitely not.
It's not a long shot.
Well, I think we're gonna wrap it there. Actually, I think Long Shot's on HBO now. Pretty sure.
Something like that. It's on something.
I might go back and watch that. But anyways, Dave, what should the people be listening to for our non-mega return podcast next week?
That's the normal programming. We got Perry Mason. Season finale has wrapped up on HBO. Get into that. Critically acclaimed film from Amy Simons, She Dies Tomorrow, on video on demand. And the new album from Afrofusion superstar Burna Boy. That's what we got so far. We'll see what else we tack on there. Maybe get that Victoria Monet album that already came out, Jaguar. We'll see. But yeah, the content gods have been good so far. The weather gods, for a little bit, were not, but we're getting through it.
At Nowstalgia Pod on Twitter, youtube.com/Nowstalgia Pod, 5-star rating and review on iTunes, soundcloud.com/Nowstalgia Pod to find all the ways to listen to the podcast. And yeah, we'll see you next week. Stay safe, wear a mask.